All right, good day, gents, and welcome to another episode of Father's Fire. My name's Jody Cedric, and every week we get together to explore the joys, the challenges, the triumphs, the sorrows, and yes, the fun of being a dad. And I'm super excited today because I have a guest with me. I'm trying to line them up because I know you don't want to just hear me, and I think having the conversation with other men help us hear and identify and connect with other men that are maybe struggling with the same things that we've struggled with, or maybe have gone through experiences that will help us through the challenges that we're going through. And so before we get into our guests, I want to remind you that I'm part of the Speak Fire family. So make sure that you check out the rest of the crew and their podcast. Also got to give a shout out to Julian Gibson, the host, CEO of Boss Talk Nation. Make sure to check him out every Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on Facebook. It is an amazing show. And of course, he's giving us some love over here. So good day, my friend. So welcome. My guest this week is Mr. James Jackson. He and I are connected via our good friend Sean Hart, and James and I are fast becoming good friends through our work together on helping Sean Hart put together a mentoring program for men who are struggling. They're coming out of maybe the incarceration scenarios or other challenges that have made it difficult for them to either be connected with their families or their children. And so James and I are working together and starting that program up. And actually, Sean's program starts this week with his next cohort of men. And so we're excited to get launched. We have, I think, 13 volunteers starting with us. So it's been fun getting to know James. But before we get into that, James, let's talk about you and I. I'm very out and going and in your face, and, I'm willing to jump in. And you're very calculated, and you're very methodical and very paced, right? And so it's a good balance to you and I mean, because it's like, let's go. And you're like, Laura, do we have everything together? And I love that balance. And I think that's important from the perspective of us as men. I think a lot of times we men think that we have to bear everything on our shoulders. And what I'm learning is that I'm stronger when I'm walking with men like you. And I think a lot of times that stems from our relationship that we had or didn't have with our father. So I'd like to maybe start there. What was your life? What was your experience with your dad as a young man? And maybe how has that rippled across into you being a dad?
Okay. Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me on here on Father's Fire. Truly, Jody, ever since I've met you, one of the things I'm really drawn to is your passion, and not just the passion to be in front of people, but the passion to help encourage change. So for one, I want to commend you on that.
Well, thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, though. Seriously, you're my guy. If that's so,
we're each other's guy.
That's what's up. So, based on the question you asked me, and I'm an open book, I had a male figure in my life that truly, without him, I wouldn't be the man I am today. However, I did not meet my father until I was 26 years old. So,
wow.
You know what I mean? So, the truth is, for me, is, I was on this treasure hunt, throughout my life, based on my lifestyle. I was always looking around, trying to guess, maybe this guy's my father. I'm like, hey, maybe this is my father, But my mom actually always told me my father's name, and I took a stab at finding him, back in the, what would I say, the 90s. They used to sell like these DVDs or CDs that had everybody's phone number in the whole country. And because my mom told me my father's name, I started searching.
Dialing for dad.
Yeah, dialing for dad. I like that. Hey, it's a real story, Sometimes, depending on where you're from, whether it's the suburbs or inner city, that's a real story. Dialing for dads. I got to write that one down, man. Yeah. But
That'll be the title of the episode.
yeah,
Bowing for Dad.
yeah. But by any means, I was able to reach out to several people, and I wind up reaching out to a woman that was my aunt, and she ushered me into connecting with my father. So that was a beautiful experience. If I start going off track, just redirect me because it's something
No,
I'm really passionate about.
no, I love this, and I love the direction that you've gone, because I think there are a lot of men like you that are left fatherless in their home, and their mom is doing a phenomenal job, but there's still a hole in their heart, and they're going, where's the dad that should have been in my life? Where's the dad that I would like to be in my life? And is there something that I did wrong as a kid? Is there something that my mom did wrong? All these nuances and these dark holes that you mentally can go down as a young boy, trying to figure out who you are in conjunction with, who your dad is, can be a real challenge.
Yeah, I agree with that. And self-discovery, is key to any developing young person, male or female, but especially for a young man. When you look at the content of your character and you're looking for someone that kind of looks like you or identifies as your father, so you can begin to mold and shape, your values, your interests, your ability to play sports or whatever it is you like doing, you know. So, that was a loss. But my mom always told me that my father was a teacher, right? So just quickly, my mom had a mental like illness. She had a nervous breakdown. So sometimes she would say things that people be like, oh, she don't know what she's talking about. But she told me he was a teacher, and I held on to that. And when I actually found him, he was actually a teacher, and
Mm.
that's literally what I wanted to be my whole life. So it was very interesting, even at 26.
So, did you want to be a dad because you thought your dad was a teacher? Did I say
Well,
that right? I think I didn't say that right. Let me restate that. Did you want to become a teacher because you thought your dad was a teacher?
Well, well, actually, I believe that was true because she dropped that on me early on in my life. So I believe that was true. But I really wanted to become a teacher because I just wanted the feelings that I had that weren't really addressed with affirmation and stuff. I wanted to be able to add value to other students, other people's lives by, being able to support them and speak quality into their life and the things that I wondered about being a surrogate in that space to help those people. So that's the reason I wanted to become a teacher.
Interesting. So, as you're a young man, and it sounds like your mom even struggled with being an active part of your life in some respects, how did you navigate that as a young boy?
Well, how do I navigate? Be honest, and I can say this with full confidence. It's only by the grace of God. So when you think of the grace of God, people often say it's only by the grace of God. But when you think of the grace of God, there's so many different situations I could have been in. But my mom was kind of like illiterate in a certain way, and my father figure, my uncle, that he was an elderly person, but he was illiterate too. So it forced me to learn how to read quicker, to adjust quicker, to be able to ask for, if our water was out, hey, can we get some water? If our heat was out, like, hey, can you help us out? So I learned how to do that. So I tapped into my neighborhood, asking my
Mm.
next door neighbor, can you help me with this? Or someone down the street or a friend's parent, being able to tap into the village network. That's a whole nother conversation though.
No,
So that's
and but that's an important part, right? Because I think a lot of times we think, we look across the street and we think, oh, you know what, they got food on the table, there's a mom in the house at least, or there's a dad at least, and you don't necessarily know that in some situations the kid is doing everything he can to keep that family together just as much, if not more, than the parents are or should be, right? And so being able to have a strong community, a village that you can turn to, an uncle, a grandma, an aunt, an aunt, whatever you call them, it's it's really critical. And I think that's part of the reason why I'm so passionate about working with you and with Sean Hart, with this mentoring program, is because there are a lot of men that grew up in homes like yours where the kid was trying to figure it out just by himself, and tapping into any resource he could to not only survive but figure out how to become a young man.
And that's true. That's true. And I'll tell you, Jody, you asked me a question probably about 3 minutes ago, and I never answered it. But based on what you're saying right then, that's the reason why I wanted to be a dad. There were a lot of missing pieces in my life that, I've constantly been on a treasure hunt. I got to get a piece of this character from this family, a piece of, this from somebody else, from my teacher, from my Sunday school teacher, from my neighbor, from the people down the street. Don't do that. You know what I mean? I had to keep my head on the swivel, but most of all, I rarely had anybody say, I love you. I rarely had anybody um, just kind of encourage me and say, hey, let me teach you how to hit the ball with the bat. Let me teach you how to catch the ball. I didn't have those things, so I had to reach out. So I made up my mind. Even at a young age, I had my first child. I have two sons. I had my first child at the age of 19. And believe it or not, I wasn't saying, hey, let's go get a kid. You know, you know what I'm saying? Because I had some goals. But, you know, in my sorrowness, in my sadness, there would be prayers that I would say, God, can you please, when I have a child, can you let it be a son so I can teach him the things he needs to know, so that I can give him the affirmations he needs to feel like a king, so I can, just be there to let him know and help him shape and guide his moral compass and values. So that's really what made me want to become a dad. The emptiness that I dealt with made me really want to become a dad. I was willing to do whatever's necessary. You know, there was a time I'm with the same woman I was with when I was 15, and I'm cool. I'm 48 now. Irregardless, I'm not ashamed of my age, but I'm with the same woman now, and there was a time when you're growing, you try to figure out. We even broke up, but I was completely determined. Like, hey, I got to do whatever's necessary to get back into that life, because I'm determined to be a dad, and I will, humble myself and redirect my thinking and all those sorts of things.
that that hits home on so many levels to me. To pray to God that you would be blessed to be a dad with boys. Um, I think a lot of men, they truly yearn to be a father, and just like mothers, they women, they yearn to be a mother, and it's actual a core aspect of their being. They want to do that. And as God bless you with those two boys, what are some things, and you touched on a little bit, what are the things that you really tried to do to connect with your boys, but also teach them that dad is here and I love you, and I'm going to be here for you no matter what? Because I think a lot of dads, especially men that didn't have a father figure, are going, how do I do this? Even though in my very being, I want to be a dad. How am I going to work through this? Can you help me, God?
Yeah. And Jody, what I got to tell you, man, it wasn't a first time success thing. Um, when you feel hurt as a man, right? When you feel hurt or you feel insecure about something you don't know, you either, because of the fear of being embarrassed, you stray away from it, or you get really angry and overprotective regarding it. So growing up where I grew up at, the only things I really knew how to do was try to play sports outside with friends, know how to at least protect yourself a little bit. As little guys, boxing and fighting and things like that. Those were the key things. And I knew from my training that um, it was important to learn how to honor and respect God, the Godhead in your family, understanding, learning how to pray. To be honest with you, I still can remember teaching my boys how to say the Lord's Prayer and things like that. But those insecurities are really what shaped. I wanted my children to be everything that I wasn't. So I had some bouts with pushing my kids to play certain sports, whether it be basketball, football. And one actually enjoyed it and said, "Oh yeah, I want to do this and that." But the other one was like, "I'm throwing the ball, man," and I'm telling you, the ball was like hitting them in the head. Like I'm like, you know, in your mind, you're like, "What did I do wrong?" I mean, I literally one day we went to YMCA, when they had the Tiny Tots basketball. And I'm like, all right, come on. Because a time in my life, I wasn't a star or anything like that. But I learned how to play and I felt really good about my skills. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to make sure this guy's a star. I took him to the practice and I'm like, shoot the ball. What's wrong with you? I'm like literally sitting in the car to myself crying, Jody. Like, what you wrong? You know, and it's funny, but truthfully with him, right? We would be outside throwing the ball. He would go in the house, and I'm standing out there like, whoa, it's cold. I live in Michigan, man. I'm out in the winter. Like he's gonna be the best at that. He's in the house. I'm like, where's he at? He's in the house, turning on TV. I'm standing out there like a fool. But then one day, I'll be honest with you. One day I was so broken that I said, God, please help me. I want to be a good dad. And he said, hey, it's not about you anymore. Tap into the gifts that I have given him. So that one day, I looked in the newspaper the next day, and they had auditions for a play because he liked music, singing, being in the plays. And I used to like that too. Believe it or not, I used to be in performing arts. We're gifted and talented, but let's get away from me. But I did that, and that was an epic change, Jody. So when I forgot about myself and magnified the gifts that God had given them, began to speak to those and forget about the hurt, the loss, the pain, and I began to nourish and water those things. Like our relationships changed. And the one in particular is my younger son stood out most to me because we both went and auditioned for a play, and they actually selected me as a cast member. And what that did, it showed to him, because a lot of us, we focus on sports, and if your kid likes music or something, you're like, oh, you're not a real man. But it showed him that his dad was a real man because he had the same gifts and ability to face his fears and overcome things. And from that moment, he began to thrive in sports too. So by me giving a little bit of, by walking in faith and giving a little bit of focus to what he was about, caused a great relationship. And he actually ended up going to school at University of Michigan, getting his degree. And currently he's working in New York now in theater and arts administration. So if I was not keen on going to God for the help that I needed, this could have stopped him from being what God, this is not a religious program. I'm just saying.
No, but that story is so important, right? And it's so beautiful because you and I come from the same perspective. I mean, God is a huge part of my life. It's a huge part of my family. But even if you're not, focused on building a relationship with God, even men that aren't, they are focused on connecting with their child, right?
Yes.
And a lot of men really struggle because they have in their mind this vision of what they want their kid to be. and they are pushing him and coaching him and doing everything they can to push him in the direction they want in their dream, in their image, instead of stepping back and going, what is my kid's natural gifts? What are my kids' natural interests? And what can I, as a dad, do to facilitate that? And, having 6 kids, I can tell you every single one of my kids are very different.
I bet.
And that was one of my lessons as a father. I had to recognize that I needed to tap in to their gifts, even though they may not necessarily be my natural gifts or my natural inclinations. But as I've allowed them to explore those gifts, it's introduced me into talents and interests that I didn't even know I had. And so we've been able to explore, like my son Zane, he became really interested in archery. I'm like, that's a sport?
Right.
And all of a sudden, we're going down to the range and I'm watching him do, his archery, and he was pretty good, right? I wasn't so good, but being able to connect on a different level as a dad with your child is really, really important. And I do think, especially if you're spiritually minded, that when we just slow down and be still and turn our hearts to God, turn our hearts to meditation, to that quiet space, and we really ponder our children and how we can connect and what they truly need, whether you have a relationship with Heavenly Father or not, you're going to receive inspiration. You're going to receive insight as to what needs to be done for your kid. But for me, I'm tapping into God, because that's been my secret sauce. Because I'm telling you, He's enlightened my mind when I'm going, yeah, I don't know what to do here.
Yeah. And I definitely can relate with that as well. And one of the reasons that I mentioned, the first thing I was able to truly teach my kid once he was speaking, I went through the whole gamut, standing up in the shower with the kid, like, hey, this is how you wash up, man. I'll get in here with you, but you go ahead and do what you got to do. And just having those moments, man, those moments are irreplaceable. But for me, like, my uncle that was, he was elderly, like I said, he was illiterate. He said where he grew up, when they went to church, if you couldn't read, they always gave you the Bible. Hey, read this. So he never went in with me. So I was getting dropped off at the church when I was like 7 years old by myself, fully dressed. Like, hey, I'll be back to pick you up. So people were looking at me like, who are you here with? You know what I mean? So that showed me that that was the way that I was when I had a child. If I did nothing else, I was going to lead with helping them understand who the God figure was, and having some moral values and things like that. And it went a long way.
Yeah, it's amazing how, to me, it's been really critical, because you said something early on about teaching your kids to pray. One of my absolute favorite memories as a dad is kneeling in family prayer and folding my little kid's arms and say, all right, man, let's pray together. And you be the voice of the words. And if you have things that you want to express your love and gratitude to God for, go ahead. But here, I'm going to coach you a little bit, but then you go. And I love those memories. And so, as we did that every night, I would then, Judy would, go off and do her things, but I would take the kids and I would tuck them in and I would sing them songs and I would make up stories. And so nighttime became a really intimate time for me and the kids. And I think a lot of dads don't take the time to do that. But you made me remember that I did that, when you were talking about teaching your kid to pray, and those really are still some very sweet memories with my kids. In fact, yesterday we had this huge snowstorm in Idaho. I mean, we got like 9 inches, just massive amount. And so I'm sending the kids videos of it, and they're like, oh man, we got to get home so we can hooky bob. I'm like, yeah, I got all the snow and I don't have anybody to take out in the snow. And so it was kind of weird. I'm reaching that time in my life where I don't have the kids around to just go, hey, let's go build a snowman or build a fort, or let's, go drag you behind the Suburban on an inner tube hooky bob. And so it's like, look, it was fun to see that my kids viewed that same experience with so much excitement and sweet memories. And it's really just about making the time for your kids.
What I want to ask you, Jody, like for men like myself, I'll tell you how I handle it at a time, but what do you do when you don't have those experiences? Like, for instance, I'll give you one thing. I wasn't able to teach my kids how to fix cars or do any handiwork because I didn't have much exposure to that. I wasn't able to teach my kids how to fish or anything like that. As an adult, I went fishing with, a pastor of a church that I was attending, and that was my first time. Like, when you want to be a dad, but you realize, like, man, what do I have in my quote unquote trick bag? I don't like, what can I offer? That's when you really simplify and say love, affirmation, responsibility, ethics, integrity, all those baseline things that can help him at least have a foundation. Like, even to this day, I'm 48 and I still have a hope. Like, I have a quote unquote bucket list, but all those things I never learned how to do, like fish and all that, I plan on getting together with my boys. And even if we take a trip once a year or twice a year to accomplish those, I still have a checklist that I would love to experience with them, you know?
That is, I love that question because I think a lot of dads struggle with that. And I remember as a kid, I was playing a basketball game, and my dad was the dad that he came to all of my games. He was very supportive. He played ball with me, but he wasn't driven to make me be like the ace player on the team, right? He just wanted me to have that experience. And I will never forget this one game. We came out, and I mean, it was a tough game. And me and the other point guard, we were going back and forth, offense, defense, going back and chasing each other around, defensive. And my coach said, I want you to stick on that guy. And I mean, I put it all on the court. And we got done and we're walking out. And the other dad of that kid came up to my dad and he goes, man, you need to really push your son. You need to, he's got natural talent and stuff. And, okay. And my dad said, well, thank you. But that wasn't my dad, right? If I would have had the other dad, he probably would have had me doing drills every morning, right?
Yeah.
But my dad wanted me to go after something because I loved it, not because he was pushing me into it. And I think a lot of dads also come to it from the perspective of, like you, man, I don't know how to fix a car. Yeah. And so fortunately, I have a village. I have other men like my good friend Reed Young. That guy can fix anything. If I have a problem, I call Reed and say, hey, Reed, do you mind coming over? And when my boys are around, especially Ashton, he loves to help. Say, hey, do you want to come help me and Reed? And Reed will teach you. I'll be turning a wrench, but really it's because he's telling me what to do. I don't know what I'm doing. I know how to turn the wrench, right? And so I think that we need to give ourselves a little bit of grace and recognize that we're not going to know everything. We're not going to have all of the answers. But that's when an uncle or a grandfather or a trusted friend or a neighbor or a pastor, a Sunday school teacher can come in and fill the gaps to help us be the fathers that we want and teach our kids and give them exposure to the things that maybe are not our natural gifts and our natural interests. And that's okay. That's okay.
Well, the thing is, we live in such a superficial world where, as a man, no matter whatever your ethnicity is, there's a response. There's like the society expects you to be all things to everyone, or else you feel that you don't have value. You know what I mean? And when you're blessed to become a father during that time, you will automatically start take dipping into the inventory you have. Just like they say about money, if you don't have nothing in the bank, you can't dig in and think you're going to get something out. So a lot of times, us as men, especially young fathers, even some fathers that have them, in middle-aged life, it's like, man, what do I have of value? So just trying to just be around like-minded people that can inspire you, like that's important. Because I mean, there was some times where I used to work probably 70 hours a week saying, well, hey, I don't know how to do nothing, but hey, I know how to work, so at least
And how to
that.
work.
But then I did that for a little bit too, and I came home and realized, well, I thought I didn't have anybody, so why don't you know how to dribble? Why don't you know how to do certain things? I mean, I didn't have nobody. I'm working. Nobody was working for me. So it's really clouded, Jody. You know what I mean? That's why programs like this really help for those that really listen in. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to take a inventory of what you don't know how to do. That should create some excitement to explore on how you can learn together. You know, I mean, I didn't just wake up with wisdom and say, "Oh, this is how we're going to pursue fatherhood." What I
Yeah.
mean? There was some crying days, crying nights. There was some times where I just felt like, hey man, why'd they choose me? Or
Yeah.
maybe I should get in the car and just start driving and never come back because I just feel like I don't have enough or don't have anything to give. But I was due to, being rooted in principles of I'm in the Christianity, principles of that. It helped me develop that long suffering and just kind of waiting, you know, for God to give me the wisdom or send the people in range that I would have the courage to ask to help me, like
Yeah.
mentors, like what we're going into with these fathers, mentors, mentorship.
And I think that's really important, to be able to tap into your village of men, your circle that can help you. I know my son, he always wanted to learn how to hunt, and I'm not a hunter. I'd never gone. And, fortunately, he won a hunting trip with someone in our church. And so me and my son went out bird hunting with Justin Bledsoe, and we went out there. And dude, I had no idea what to do, but it was super fun. He brought his dogs. He set the dogs out, and we walked the foothills and shot at some birds. Didn't hit anything, but we got the experience of somebody else's expertise to walk hand in hand with us. But I think what it really comes down to, when you put aside all of the self doubt, when you embrace your desire to be a dad that is truly involved and connected and loving with your child, it really comes down to recognizing that you, with all of your faults, with all of your talents and all of your gifts, you are exactly what your child needs.
And that simply stated, that's it. I'll tell you, Jody, I mean, I don't know if you do a lot of reading. This was an old book, but one of my relatives let me get it. I don't know if you can see it. There was one time where Mr. Cosby was kind of like the traditional all-American father, which I don't want to cast judgment on anybody, but on the
No.
back here, it says fatherhood is pretending the present you love most is soap on a rope. You know what I mean? Helping your children learn English as a foreign language. Asking your son to make up a name rather than tell anybody who he is. Knowing that everything is okay, that means I haven't killed anyone. And telling your daughter that Michael Jackson loves all his fans, but has special feelings for the ones who eat broccoli. Just those magical moments, I might say. You know what I mean? So a lot of times we think that a material thing or a certain skill, because of our affection and how we see others, we kind of look at them as giants. Like, man, these guys are much more fatherly than me. But the truth is, patience, grace, love, understanding. I can't forget imagination. You know what I mean? When
Oh
you don't
yeah,
have money to buy a toy, you gotta say, "Hey, let's get in the car. Let's go for a ride." You know what I mean? And there's nothing on there, and they'll get on your back and say, "Whoa," you know what I mean? Those are the times. Those are the memories. But
I love that.
buy all this stuff and everything. They grow. Oh, I don't play with that no more. But you say, "You remember that toy I bought you?" I don't quite remember that. But you say, remember that time when we were imagining we were flying kites? And yeah, I remember that. So I could tell anybody that's kind of thinking like, oh, I don't have this and that. As long as you have an imagination and you have some passion and interest in connecting with your child, like Jody mentioned, connecting is really the key factor. I mean, you have everything it takes. So just wanted to share that quickly.
No, I love it, man. It's hard to believe you and I've been going for 35 minutes. I always love our conversations because they always go to the core of the matter. But both you and we're doing everything we can to try to be good dads, and we admittedly we don't have all of the answers. I mean, we're trying to figure out what it means to be a dad. We're trying to figure out
Mhm.
what it means to be a man and a husband, and we're also trying to figure out how to navigate these crazy personalities that are unique in each one of our children. And it's a moving target. And in our experience, God has been a critical part of helping us tap into that, and also the village of men around us and women. And it really is critical. In closing, is there one or two things that you just think are critically important for men to do as fathers or as dads?
Well,
He's like, we need another 30 minutes.
nah, but truthfully, man, the key is don't be so hard on yourself, because truly what you respect is what you attract. And we all start from humble beginnings. So don't be so hard on yourself. And also treat love as if it is priceless. Give all that you have each day, and you know you'll have strength to do even more the next day. So those are two things that I think is very important, and I think we're all capable of that. I don't think it costs anything except a little humility, which is priceless, but you all have it. So thanks for that opportunity, Jody. Thanks for
No.
asking me that.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I've loved the conversation. I mean, it's just been amazing. For you guys that are tuning in, thank you so much for joining me every week. James and I would like to extend a personal invitation to you to reach out to us if you're interested in helping us with our mentoring program through
Please,
Involved
please,
Dad.
please.
Please do that. I will put a link in the commentary about from the podcast. Please reach out. Our mission is to help dads not only connect with their kids and their wives, and just to create a home environment that their kids will relish and thrive and prosper in, and build relationships that don't just last right now, but they ripple into generations to come. So if you want to help us create a legacy one man at a time, we'd love to have you on this journey. So thank you guys so much for joining us. We will check you same time, same bat channel, just next week, right here on Father's Fire. See ya.
Yeah. See ya. Help a father, help a family.
Oh, I love that. Help a father, help a family. That's awesome.
All right,
That's
good brother.
great.